Hello there everyone, and welcome to what will eventually be another book review. But before we get to that, I thought I'd just do a little bit of a preamble to set up the book somewhat, or rather my expectations of it. So, growing up in the 1980s as a child, my love of science fiction was already pretty well established. For example, I absolutely loved the Star Wars films, as did many other children at that time. But I voraciously gobbled up whatever I could find on the television, which was my main way of getting media in that time. I had yet to embrace the delights of the original Star Trek at that time, and TNG was still light years away, unbeknownst to me. But the first science fiction series I really cut my teeth on was the 1978 rerun of Battlestar Galactica. I admit I found it rather scary at times, with the killer Cylons that were so intent on wiping out what remained of the human race. It was also the first time I encountered an actor that had appeared in another of my favourite television programmes, The A-Team. The lovable rogue Face, as played by Dirk Benedict, also cropped up here as the equally lovable Starbuck. But what Battlestar Galactica offered above the dated aesthetics of Star Trek or Buck Rogers was something I had hitherto never previously encountered: camaraderie. Faced with these impossible odds, these brave fighter pilots and the industrious mechanics and strategists in their midst formed close bonds with their fellow man, galvanised by the common goal to thwart the murderous Cylons. Of course, I also loved watching the Vipers blasting down the chute and returning battle-scarred, having dispatched another dozen robot bastards along the way. And so, when this old book, White Wing by Gordon Kendell, appeared in one of my recent book hauls, it set my childhood heart all aflutter. Those fantasies of perhaps being a pilot one day aboard Battlestar Galactica seemed that much closer. The blurb certainly seemed to promise something of a similar ilk. But was this a rip-roaring adventure, or was it a damp squib? We will shortly find out. But anyway, as ever, let's begin by looking at the copy that I've got. This is the scan of my cover. I think there's been only one other variation on the cover design, which I'll show later. Originally published back in 1985, Gordon Kendell is actually a pseudonym for Sharianne Lewitt and Susan Schwartz, so a pair of female writers that adopted a male pseudonym, which was all the rage back then because it's such a male-dominated genre. But anyway, let's look at this cover in slightly more detail. Now, as much as I like it, what the hell is going on with the decal on that gleaming white ship? I had to look a bit more closely to discover that it is tiger print and a tiger's face, which I can assure you doesn't feature in the book at all. One would assume it's perhaps a parallel universe where the Tiger King himself is doing battle with the forces of Carol Baskin. But yeah, very odd, very odd. All right, first of all, let's attempt a very brief synopsis of what this is about, because there's not a hell of a lot going on, to be fair. Very much like Battlestar Galactica, there is a baddie. There's an alien force. They're not robots, they're called the Sejadi or something like that. And as far as I can tell, they're humanoid as well. It's just humans. There's nothing remotely alien about any of the cultures you encounter in this book. And so humanity versus the Sejadi. The Sejadi are trying to wipe out humanity, I think, to take over their worlds, to occupy these worlds. You have the White Wing, which originate from Mother Earth. Mother Earth, the dear planet we all share, was destroyed 200 years ago. And the White Wing are the sole survivors of that calamity. The other humans that feature in this book all belong to groups, like on these battleships, they all differentiate into different colours. So you've got the White Wing, they wear white. And then you've got all of the others that wear blue, green, red, all the other colours. And they all appear to be from other colony worlds. So at some point in the past, there's been a diaspora from Earth and they've formed their own colonies. And there's one thing that unites all the other colours against the whites. They don't bloody like them one little bit. We don't really know why. But the White Wing as it pertains to the battleships, so each of these colours have their own fighter units. The White Wingers never display emotion, and they're also very ruthless in combat, to the point where if one of their fellow comrades appears to be on the verge of being caught by the enemy using tractor beams and that, they will just kill them outright, rather than let them fall into the hands of the enemy. So all the other colours can't stand the White Wings. The other thing of note about the White Wing is that, for whatever reason, this is kept a secret from all the other colours, but the White Wings all engage in polyamory. And so they live in these family units of 7, I think it's 7, different mixtures of men and women. And they're all married to each other. They all live together, and one imagines they all shag each other. But in terms of the book, the kind of carnal aspect of things is never seen. I mean, never even talked about as such. Occasionally you'll see there'll be a heterosexual man and woman that will go behind closed doors and you assume they're getting it on. But otherwise, nothing else is entertained. I mean, there's no group activities, for example. I mean, I think early on I realised, I had the feeling this was written by a woman. I didn't realise 2 women, but it's certainly more focused on the emotional aspects of these groups. But despite the fact that they all live in these great big family units, they get on remarkably well. I'm not quite sure how. I mean, there's no jealousy. There appears to be no jealousy. I don't know how they're pairing up and all the rest of it. It's all very vague. The only thing you really get to see in terms of affection, though, outward bodily affection, is occasionally someone's hair will be caressed or someone's head will be lightly resting against a shoulder, usually a woman against a manly shoulder. But this never descends into Mills and Boon territory. Rather, it descends into a fucking tedious trawl. And I must say, I really struggled to finish this. I never, ever stop reading a book. If I started it, I'll get to the end, to the bitter end, come hell or high water, as I've probably said before. But I got to page 120 and I was getting ready to set fire to the damn thing. And then I discovered a tombstone left by another unfortunate reader. The bookmark marking the place where they got to and got no further. So as I tipped over that tombstone, I felt a rush of pride, at least, that I'd surpassed them. But I also felt envious that I hadn't stopped where they had. Saying that, in persevering, I never really enjoyed the story. Let's not go that far. But I felt something for this group unit. I got to know them slightly, and I kind of felt, not that I felt sorry for the authors, but I empathized with what they were trying to do, perhaps. So I'm not trying to belittle their achievements whatsoever, because I can see that online a lot of people do like this book, but it's certainly not my cup of tea. One of the problems is that the dialogue is often quite strange. Sometimes you don't quite know who's talking and talking to who. The way they talk is often quite odd as well. On top of all of that, the perspective shifts around. Sometimes you're seeing through the eyes of one person, then someone else, and then you're getting a mixture of emotions into the mix as well, and it gets even more confusing. The main thread of the story, there's a potential spy in the mix, an enemy spy, and so there's a part way through you discover who the spy is, and this is a spoiler, beware. They've infiltrated the damned White Wing, and so into the family unit that we follow. But yeah, there's not a hell of a lot going on. I tell you, this story could have been told in a short story very, very easily. But of course, the crux of the whole thing is emotion, I think. It's being one with that family. And towards the end, I actually did care about a number of them. Or I cared about what they were all about, I suppose, as silly as it was. But there we are, White Wing. Shite Wing, as I was calling it towards the end. I mean, I really did start to resent having to read it, but in so doing, it wasn't as bad as I initially thought. But it was still bad. Let's rate it. So, I'm afraid I'm going to give it 1 out of 5. And so that gets the old heave-ho of drink. Yeah. But I've been quite kind in a way, because when I was tiptoeing over the tombstone left by the last unfortunate reader, I was thinking I'm going to give this a 0, or perhaps even a negative star, like a black hole star. It sucks not just light, but your very soul into it. But no, I thought I'd be a bit kind there, and it is what it is. If you're looking for something that's really emotionally dense, then this will be the thing for you. But as far as the space battles go, for example, it's all very, very up in the air, airy-fairy. It's not hard science fiction whatsoever. They're flying these fighters. I should have said this earlier. They're flying these fighters that definitely resemble the Vipers in Battlestar Galactica. In fact, they have a similar name for them. I can't remember what they're called now, Stings or something. And they fire various different colours of laser depending on how much power they're putting into it. Yeah, I don't know. It wasn't my cup of tea whatsoever. Anyway, there we are. That's my review of White Wing. Read it at your peril. But if you did enjoy it, if you have read it and you enjoyed it, please tell me why you enjoyed it, because you probably like the things I didn't like. Well, that will be the only explanation, because otherwise, yeah, what's going on? Anyway, right, let's leave it there. Thanks for watching, and cheerio.